check, check. We're here. Good evening, and welcome to day 65. It is also Ghana Independence Day, so I am representing the motherland. Happy Independence Day to all of the Ghanaians that might be watching this. Anyway, let's jump back into it. Today we have the second census of numbers, and like the first, it's lots of names and lots of numbers, and it's easy to gloss over things. It was just definitely a equally difficult read for me. But what I found interesting was I used Claude to just do a quick comparison of the numbers. Um, and it's super interesting, right? The sort of deviation, the change in numbers across the tribes. I think what's probably most important is that at this point, and we're nearing the twilight of Moses' life. We are um, we're about to go in, or they're about to go in. They're about to sort of, get there. They've already started talking about assigning land, and hence, the census and seeing how much land each group should have. Um, but at this point, no one that was of the old generation exists anymore, except for Caleb and Joshua. And God has indeed sort of kept his promise that a whole generation, those that rebelled against him, those that really uh, uh, sort of grumbled against Moses and against God at the report of the spies, and also at the lack of food, and basically that entire generation died in the wilderness, and we are going through to a new generation. What's interesting is the number you'd think would have changed significantly, but it's actually just a third of a percent that is not present. So after 40 years and a whole generation explicitly being said to have, died, according to Claude's calculations, which AI doing maths is never good. But according to Claude's sort of comparison of the numbers, and it lists them all out and is verifiable easily. Um, Only 1,820 men. Um, there's only a difference of 1,820 between the first census we saw in Numbers 1 and the census in Numbers 26. So for 40 years, God to sort of keep that number relatively, because 1,820 men, considering these are the men, is somewhat negligible in a group of people that's like over 500,000. Especially when you're not counting women and children. And so it would appear as though the number pretty much remains super stable. Um, and interestingly, I just want to talk about the biggest loser and the biggest gainer. Simeon lost 63% of their numbers from Numbers 1 to Numbers 26, no pun intended. And that could probably be attributed to the apostasy that happened at Peor with Zimri, son of Salu, um, and the 24,000 deaths that occurred in that plague probably was mostly in that tribe. And the biggest gainer is Manasseh, who goes 64%, a 64% increase. Now, interestingly enough, that 64% um, likely ties into um, the blessing that Jacob gave when he crossed his hands and blessed Manasseh over Ephraim, because Manasseh was the younger of the two. So it's interesting that of all the tribes, Manasseh should become the greater when that's who was blessed to be the greater. Um, Interesting unexpected if you understand how prophecy works, and how these guys held the power that lied in their tongues, which is really interesting, right? Because I'm reading Aragon, the second book of the Inheritance Cycle is the name of the series, but the book that was based on the book that the movie Aragon was based on. I'm reading the second in the series, and the way magic works in the series effectively is an ancient language where the word is the thing, right? The word is the essence of the thing, and so when they are using magic, it's really just sort of putting words together, but there's an understanding of the power behind the words. Now, it's a Christian book. I only say it because I think it's a good illustration of at least how they held their words back in the day, and probably how we should be holding our words. We definitely don't, most likely, but probably how we should be holding our words, where Isaac blesses Jacob over Esau, and when he finds out, he can't just take the words back. The words can't just, oh, they were just words and bless you on top of it. He has to maneuver around the things that he had established with his words, for Jacob to give Esau some sort of respite. So, yeah, um, that's super interesting. And number 27 deals with this interesting situation where the daughters of Zelophehad, um, whose father had no son, um, go and ask for his share because they don't have any brothers. Should the father's if they should the father's name disappear because he had no sons, and Moses brings that before the Lord, and again we see God dealing with the community and dealing with the culture, right? Because had they not brought this, it appears that the norm, or the status quo would be, yeah, sort of, their daughters don't get anything. They don't get any land because there was no brother. Um, the lover didn't have any sons, and so the daughters don't get anything. They get married off, and that effectively that family, that name disappears. Um, Consequently, the daughters have no inheritance from their father simply because there was no man. So when again the Bible talks about, or not even the Bible, when people say the Bible doesn't value women, this was God obviously um, adjusting the culture such that women had value. So that if there was no brother, they still got something. I've talked about how with the nomadic people and in the culture, being a woman held certain dangers that meant belonging to your father's house or your husband's house was more than just um, a convenience out of marriage, or it was actually beneficial to the women at the time, hence why they desired it so much. And God's here, again, adjusting the culture such that they actually have more rights, better rights than they did otherwise. Number 27 ends with Joshua being picked out to succeed Moses. Moses is, it's peak because after everything that he's been done, everything he's done, he's not going to enter the promised land because of what happened um, at the waters of Meribah. Um, and he doesn't seem bitter by it. Interestingly enough, we will find out that his bones are never found, and further, more interesting, we see him later on in the Transfiguration with Jesus, along with the only other person whose bones were never found, well, who actually never died, Elijah. Um, well, he wasn't the only other person who never died, but we see them too there. So that's make of that what you will. But yeah, and that's Numbers 26 to 27. Uh, One of those ones where you just have to sort of, stick through, read it, get to the end, pray that there's something that remains. That I found it interesting, the numbers. Um, but yeah, tomorrow is numbers 28 to 30. God willing, we'll be here. Um, yeah, have a good rest of your day.